Hey guys, Justin Briscoe here. We are at the tiny home community. We are currently still working on a little bit of shiplap. We're waiting on the rest of our cabinets, and we're continuing to trench for our electric line that's coming in. And so, again, kind of like last week, we did a little bit different video because we don't want to be too redundant on showing you guys the tiny home community without a lot of updates. And so something I want to talk about today that I'm sure a lot of you guys saw the title today of why I'm upset that I'm receiving almost a $17,000 check from our government. I just want to go into the details and talk to y'all a little bit how we got to this place and why we're receiving this check and what played out to get to this point. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm looking at this from a perspective of an economical perspective. To me, at the end of the day, I'm a numbers guy, and this comes down to pure economics and what I think works from what's my opinion works from an economical perspective versus, unfortunately, the road we're heading down that I don't think works. I think it's a short-term fix with a lot of the stuff going on with the stimulus check and all the rental assistant programs. And I understand people need help. I get it. But from my perspective, I don't believe that's a responsibility our government should take on, and I think we're going to have some long-term repercussions to decisions that are being made by our nation right now. And so, yeah, I just want to go in a little bit of detail on how I received that check, why I received this check, and how we kind of got to this point. So you guys coming along with us today, and y'all let me know what you think. I'm sure I'm going to ruffle some feathers. There's going to be some people that agree with me, and there's going to be some people that completely disagree. And I respect that. So don't get mad at me. I'll listen to your perspective and your opinion, and I'll respect it. And I just ask that you guys do the same. Let's have, if we have some negative comments below, let's try to have a healthy conversation here, and let's be respectful of each other's opinions. And so with that being said, let's get into it. Let's go check on these guys over here, see how they're doing. I'm good.
Make me work, make me sweat inside, make me feel like I'm alive. Take this hurt, lady, throw it in my face. Don't let these bones slow you down, 'cause I'm coming on strong. Grass should have looked greener. I need a true believer in disguise.
Okay, guys, so as you all know, I am a real estate investor. We have a lot of properties here in Denison, Texas. What I want to talk to you guys about today is a tenant that we've had in one of our houses for quite some time that has been able to not, I guess, get away with not paying rent due to things that are going on in the world today, mostly because of the and some decisions that our government's made to assist or to try to be of assistance to tenants. Let me start at the beginning with this tenant. I'm kind of guessing on the time frame, but they've been in our house for about 2 years. And when they moved into our house, the crazy thing is that they paid almost 6 months in advance. I've had that happen maybe one other time. People always talk about paying months and months in advance, but this was a tenant that talked about and actually put up 6 months of rent. And so this would have been probably springtime 2019, I would say. And things went great. We never heard from them. They took care of the house. I check in every once in a while. It's close to where our house is at, so I'm always driving by it, and they kept the yard mowed. Just seemed like a great family. They are a good family. Don't let me misuse my words. The 6 months passed. We were probably late summer, early fall 2019, and they said, "Hey, Justin, we want to pay another 6 months in advance." And it was coming time to where that money was due, and a week or two had passed. Like, "Hey, you guys gonna pay?" We're kind of getting to a point to where we're now getting behind, even though it's a few weeks. But I trust you guys. I know y'all are capable and are going to pay this money. And so a week passed, and they came up, and I think they ended up paying me like 3 months. And so that was awesome. And so we're getting kind of towards the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, and that 3 months had surpassed, and they were struggling with paying rent, especially like December 19, January 2020. And a month or two would pass, and normally when someone's late on rent, I always say rent's due on the 1st. We give a 3-day grace period. If the 4th comes and you've not paid rent, we're going to send you a late notice. Based off that late notice, if rent's still not paid, we're going to file for an eviction pretty quickly. And even though we file for an eviction, there's a court cost associated with that. We still allow for the tenant to catch up on their rent. And most of the time they do catch up. 4 out of 5 times they'll catch up. The 1 out of 5 times we do have to move forward with the eviction process, or a lot of the time they move out. If they've not paid rent and a month has passed and they know they're not going to be able to catch up and we've already filed for the eviction, a lot of the time they'll move out and we take possession of the house and everything's great. There's the few times that I actually do have to go to court and go through the actual eviction process in front of the judge. And so I showed them a little bit more flexibility because they had paid for quite a bit of rent in advance previously. And so I wanted to work with them because I could tell they were struggling financially. And so a few months passed and I was like, hey guys, we're getting to the point we really gotta probably go ahead and move forward with filing for this eviction. Like, no, we understand. So I think the first time we sent them the late notice and they ended up paying a month or two and kind of got caught up. And then March 2020, April 2020 came along, and you all know what was going on during that time. They, from my perspective, used the as a crutch for not paying rent. Whether that was truly the case, I know before March and April came, they were having issues with paying rent, but once the virus showed up, that was their main excuse on why they weren't able to pay rent. And so, again, we knew they had the capability of paying in advance. They were talking about their stimulus check and how they had their tax return coming in, and so we worked with them because it was tough for everyone at that time. We didn't know where the economy was heading. We didn't know where the world was going. I mean, it was kind of scary times there for a month or two when all this started hitting the U.S. And so we worked with them, showed them a lot of flexibility, but again, we got to a point to where it was just the same story over and over and over. And as an investor and as someone who is in real estate, I mean, at some point in time, I got to cut my losses. I mean, I want to be sensitive and I want to help people out, and I felt like we did help them out with giving them plenty of time. But at some point in time, you gotta make a decision. You got to make sacrifices, and that's the position we felt like we were in, that we need to go ahead and move forward with the eviction process. So we did. So we got to the point to where we finally were able to file for an eviction, and we had missed the court date. Completely dropped the ball on my side. That was my fault. We're talking April, May, and at that time they're about 2 months behind. And so, as owner of the LLC and of my business, completely dropped the ball. Should have been there. We were there, but we showed up a little late and just wasn't able to move forward at that point in time. And so, another month passed. They paid a few months of rent. They were kind of getting caught up a little bit, but they were still a month or two behind because a few months had passed. And so as time passed, they got further and further behind, and we decided to file for eviction again in September of 2020. So we went in, filed for it. Typically when you file for an eviction, I pretty much just say like the court date's gonna be about 30 days after that, because you have to file, they have to process it, and they send you a letter with the court date that's set up, whatever, 2.5, 3 weeks later. I pretty much just call it 30 days. So we filed for the eviction on September, and then October 1st rolled around, and President Trump came up with the CDC moratorium, and our court date was set for, I think, October 9th or 10th. And so I didn't know exactly what to do, because at that point in time, I heard that based off the CDC moratorium, we were no longer going to be able to evict someone based off of late rent, late payments. And so the court date was set up. I'd already paid for the court costs. I went ahead and went, and we were actually the only people there that day. And we went into the judge's office, and he really didn't know what to do, because we were the first case that he was dealing with as far as the CDC moratorium that goes. And so he said, hey, listen, I got to make some phone calls. I got to get you guys an answer. Let's reconvene tomorrow at this time. So went back in the next day, and I could tell the judge was a little anxious. He didn't really know how to handle the situation, but he'd called down to Austin and had gotten some advice. And I guess they told him that, yeah, listen, I mean, based off the CDC moratorium, if the landlord is trying to evict based off past due rent, I mean, he can't evict them. That's the CDC moratorium is in place for that particular reason. And so at this point in time, we were right at 7 months behind on rent. It might have been right at 6 months, but we were coming up on this, I think as of October, that would have been the 7th month that they would have been behind on rent. And yeah, they had paid rent earlier in the year, like February, March, like when all this first started, But even when they paid that, they were still behind a few months. And so at that point in time, I had to figure out something to do. And I figured I could evict them, but it had to be based off something that was outside of late rent. And luckily, this individual had been with us for about a year and a half, probably at this point in time. So of course, their contract had ran out. They were on a month-to-month basis, and so I said, you know what? I don't know what else to do other than let's send them a 30-day notice to vacate, because that's what the contract read. At that point in time, once your 1-year lease runs out, it goes month to month. And so I sent them a 30-day notice to vacate, and they received that letter, and they did not vacate. So then I went to file for an eviction again. And at this point in time, they had tried applying for the rental assistance program, but I believe they were only going to pay up to 6 months, but the tenant had to be up to date. And by the time we had sent the 30-day notice and had filed for the eviction again, they were 8 months late, fixing to go on 9 months. And so what they were telling me is like, hey, we're filing for this rental assistance program. If we get approved, we'll get that 6 months and we'll get caught up on these other 3 months. We'll just give you cash. So they were applying for this 6-month rental assistance program, but they had to be up to date with their other rent. And they were at the time probably about 8 to 9 months behind. And so they were not able to qualify for that program because they weren't able to come up with the extra 2 or 3 months of rent, even though they were telling me they were going to come up with that and file for this. In my opinion, in my mind, I think they were just kicking the can down the road to keep me from filing for eviction based off the 30-day notice to vacate. So at this point in time, I got my attorney involved and said, listen, I'm done. I got to get them out of there. I don't want any more excuses. I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna let you take this over. Let's get them evicted. I got to write this up as a loss. And so he files for the eviction, and then we have Snowmageddon, and we're supposed to be at court Tuesday to file for the eviction. And of course, everything's shut down. And so you talk about a lucky tenant. Me dropping the ball, being late to the first eviction. Second eviction was based off the CDC moratorium. The third eviction was based off of the Snowmageddon, to where we couldn't make it to court. And so we were going to reschedule that, but then the state of Texas passed a new rental assistance program that allowed for up to 12 months of rent to get paid, and then they would also pay for an additional 3 months in advance. So when they were filling out the paperwork for this, we were dang near 11 months behind. And so they applied for the rental assistance program, and the state had asked us, me being the landlord, for documentation showing what they were behind on, what the lease contract looked like, what was due, late fees, all that good stuff. So we supplied all that information, I guess about 2 weeks ago, and then we just got word last week that it was approved, and based off rent being $1,200 a month, we're getting 11 months of rent paid plus 3 months in advance. And so that seems like a really good thing, right? I mean, I'm stressing out about missing out on rent for all these months, and now I'm going to be getting one big lump sum check, and I'm going to be made even for everything, and they'll be caught up for the next 2-3 months. In theory, that sounds great, but in reality, where I get upset and where I get frustrated at is that I'm even in a position to where the government is telling me that I can't evict this person. And now the government's ponying up, or the government's stepping up and cutting me a check for this money. And honestly, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna take advantage of it just like all the other landlords are, but I would just assume the government not be involved. I would assume them not intervening, stepping in and allowing for me not to file for an eviction. And then if that was the case, if they would have not stepped in and they would have allowed for me to just file for the eviction, we would have been done with this a long time ago, and I would have already had the house rented again. But I know there's gonna be a lot of people out there that say, why are you so upset? You're getting a big check. I don't think that that's our government's job to make me whole. I don't think they can tell me as a landlord that I'm not allowed to evict someone if they're not paying rent. I get it. There's circumstances that have been going on this last year, and there's a lot of people suffering. I understand it, but I don't believe that that's our government's position to step in. And not even from a political perspective, but from an economic perspective. That's where I started this video, saying I'm not upset from a political perspective. I'm upset from an economic perspective, because short term, the government handing out these stimulus checks, giving money out, it's going to seem like it's working, but I think it's just a Band-Aid for the bigger issue that we have on hand. I think We need to quit manipulating the market. The market can't be manipulated to continue to just go up from now on. There's got to be corrections. It's inevitable. We as citizens, I mean, we're responsible for those financial obligations. We've signed contracts. We've taken on those financial obligations knowing that there's risks involved. And again, that's where I get upset at, is that our government stepped in and they're making these decisions for us. On the short term, it's going to make our economy look good like it is right now. We're seeing all-time highs, but long term, it's going to make the correction way worse than what it should have been. We're going to see a correction. I don't know when that's going to be, whether it's 6 months, 2 years from now. We're going to have a correction in the market. And again, this is my opinion. I'm not predicting it. I'm just my opinion of what I'm seeing and what's going on right now. We're going to see a correction. So again, a lot of are going to say, just suck it up, Buttercup. Why are you mad? I wish I was getting $17,000. And yeah, I mean, from the general public, that seems great that the government's stepping up and making me whole for my loss. But again, as a real estate investor, I mean, I'm taking on a risk, and that's part of it. And I just want to run a business to where it's a fair playing field. Again, I don't want to seem insensitive. I want to be flexible. I want to work with that person, and I went above and beyond and worked with this person way more than anyone else I ever have. I mean, I let this person get way too far behind, and that's my fault. I mean, I should have been more stern and maybe filed the eviction sooner, to where maybe I didn't run into the CDC moratorium in October. But I'll finish with this. We have a lot of tenants that are currently paying rent, and this is our only tenant that has struggled financially to where they got this far behind. Most of our tenants, they would not pay that week, the first 2 weeks that it was due, and they say, hey, we're struggling, COVID, we're not getting as many hours at work, or my husband lost his job. And they would communicate with me, and they would make a decision. They would say, hey, Justin, sorry, but we're going to break the lease. I know we still have seven months left in this lease, but we're going to break the lease. Is that okay? And I said, yeah. I mean, I get it. I appreciate you being honest with me and upfront. Do what you have to do for your family. And legally, they were obligated to fulfill that contract, but due to their circumstances and just what everyone was going through at that time, I allowed for them to get out of their contract. And yeah, maybe they owed me 2 weeks, a month worth of rent. We'd keep the deposit and use that to repair the house, and I'd still lose a little bit of money. But due to the circumstances, I felt like it was best case scenario. And it just stinks that I've got this one tenant, whether they're truly financially struggling or they're using this situation as a crutch to not pay rent. I'm unsure. I can't speak for them. So here we are, guys. I'm getting almost a $17,000 check from the government, and unfortunately, I'm not very happy about that. So again, sorry today's video is a little long-winded and getting kind of political and getting into economics with you guys, but I just wanted to tell you all my story, and I want to hear what some of you guys think. Leave some comments down below. Let me know what you think. If you're dealing with similar situations, let me know how you handled it, or maybe there's ways I could have handled it better. Maybe I needed to be more sensitive and more flexible. I felt like I was sensitive and inflexible with the individual. And at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, I'm being made whole on what's due to me, but I think there's going to be long-term repercussions, and we're going to be paying for the decisions we're making right now. I think it's going to affect us long term, and we're going to look back and be like, man, I wish our government wasn't involved as what they have been. So you guys let me know what you think down below. If you've not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, and until next time, peace.